In a world where international politics and economic power collide, even the smallest move can have global consequences. Today, we dive into one of the most audacious geopolitical gambits of recent history: former President Donald Trump's $6.4 billion threat over a Canadian bridge project and the shocking response from Canadian officials that stunned the United States. This is a story of diplomacy, brinkmanship, and the unforeseen fallout that continues to reverberate across North America. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We break down every angle of this explosive international saga, and you don't want to miss a single detail. Donald Trump, known for his bold statements and aggressive policy moves, has long approached international relations through a lens of transactional power. His recent threat to leverage $6.4 billion against Canada over a bridge project was no exception. But what began as a straightforward assertion of American interests quickly evolved into a diplomatic spectacle revealing the complexities of North American relations and the limits of unilateral pressure. The bridge in question, a major infrastructure endeavor connecting Detroit, Michigan and Windsor, Ontario, has been under discussion for over a decade. Originally conceived to improve trade efficiency, ease traffic congestion, and enhance economic growth, the bridge represents more than just concrete and steel. It symbolizes the intertwined economies of the United States and Canada. The project was estimated to cost approximately $6.4 billion, a staggering figure reflecting not only construction costs, but also legal, environmental, and logistical considerations. For Trump, the project became a point of contention due to concerns over funding responsibilities, American job creation, and perceived advantages for Canadian interests. Trump's approach was direct. He publicly suggested that the U.S. could halt funding, delay approval, or impose economic penalties if Canada did not acquiesce to certain conditions, including increased American oversight and preferential treatment for U.S. construction firms. This threat, unprecedented in its scale and public nature, sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and sparked intense media coverage on both sides of the border. Trump framed the bridge issue as a test of Canada's willingness to negotiate fairly and a demonstration of American leverage. Analysts in Washington noted that such an approach was consistent with Trump's America First doctrine, prioritizing perceived national advantage over traditional diplomatic subtlety. However, Canada, led by senior officials including the then Minister of Infrastructure Mark Carney, responded with an unexpected combination of firmness and wit. Rather than capitulating, Canadian authorities emphasized sovereignty, treaty obligations, and legal frameworks that limited the scope of U.S. intervention. Carney's response became iconic. He publicly reminded American leaders that Canada had invested billions into the project and that unilateral pressure would not alter the carefully negotiated arrangements. Carney also highlighted Canada's commitment to creating a balanced and transparent process, ensuring that both nations benefit equally from the bridge's economic potential. Trump's threat, which many assumed would coerce Canada into compliance, instead exposed vulnerabilities in his international strategy. For one, it underscored the limits of U.S. leverage when dealing with allied nations that operate under independent legal and financial frameworks. Second, the response revealed how public threats can backfire diplomatically. Media coverage in the U.S. highlighted the resilience of Canadian officials, portraying them as savvy negotiators who stood their ground against American pressure. International observers praised Canada's measured approach, reinforcing the country's reputation for principled diplomacy. The episode had lasting consequences for the bilateral relationship. Trade discussions, previously expected to move smoothly, now required delicate negotiation and confidence-building measures. U.S. businesses involved in cross-border projects had to navigate a more cautious environment, balancing opportunities with the reality that threats alone could not shape Canadian policy. Experts also warned that such confrontations could embolden other allied nations to resist unilateral pressure, potentially reshaping how the U.S. negotiates trade and infrastructure projects globally. Within the U.S., reactions were mixed. Trump supporters praised the aggressive stance, framing it as a demonstration of American strength and negotiation acumen. Critics, however, argued that the threat was poorly conceived, risked alienating a key ally, and could result in long-term economic repercussions. Congressional leaders weighed in, with some emphasizing the need for diplomacy over coercion. Economic analysts noted that delays or strained relations could disrupt supply chains, affect automotive trade, and even influence broader North American market stability. For Canadians, Carney's response was a source of national pride. Social media and news outlets highlighted how Canada stood firm against pressure from its southern neighbor, reinforcing public support for leaders who prioritize sovereignty and economic fairness. The bridge project itself became a symbol not only of infrastructure, but of national identity, illustrating the fine balance between collaboration and independence in cross-border relations. International relations scholars pointed out that the Trump-Canada bridge incident serves as a case study in modern diplomacy. They noted several key lessons. Public threats can undermine negotiation leverage if the opposing party has legal, financial, or political mechanisms to resist pressure. Allies may respond unpredictably, and their responses can enhance their international standing while complicating U.S. objectives. And infrastructure projects, often viewed as apolitical or technical, can become flashpoints for geopolitical tension. The story attracted global attention. European media framed it as an example of American assertiveness clashing with Allied norms. Asian news outlets analyzed the broader implications for trade negotiations, while Latin American observers noted potential lessons for their own cross-border infrastructure projects. Trump's threat, rather than demonstrating unassailable strength, sparked debate about the role of diplomacy, negotiation tactics, and the limits of economic coercion in modern international relations. From an economic perspective, the incident highlighted the interconnected nature of North American trade. The automotive industry, logistics companies, and labor markets were all closely watching the outcome. Analysts predicted that any disruption could increase costs, delay shipments, and potentially slow economic growth in border regions. Canada, by maintaining its position, reassured investors that projects would proceed transparently, minimizing market uncertainty. Meanwhile, U.S. companies had to adjust expectations and explore alternative approaches to securing contracts and influence. Looking forward, experts suggest that the episode teaches a critical lesson for policymakers. Strength in international negotiations is not always about bold threats, but about understanding leverage, respecting legal frameworks, and anticipating the other side's likely responses. Carney's calm yet firm handling of the situation exemplifies how diplomacy can achieve strategic outcomes without escalating tensions, setting a precedent for future cross-border infrastructure discussions. Politically, the incident became a talking point in both countries. In the U.S., it fueled debates about Trump's foreign policy style and the balance between assertiveness and diplomacy. In Canada, it reinforced the importance of leadership that can negotiate firmly while maintaining cooperative relations. Beyond politics and economics, the bridge itself became a metaphor for international relations. Concrete, steel, and engineering design represented not just a physical connection, but a bridge between negotiation styles, political cultures, and national priorities. Ultimately, Trump's $6.4 billion threat did not achieve its intended effect. Instead, it highlighted the resilience of Canadian negotiation, the limitations of public threats in diplomacy, and the complex interplay of politics, economics, and international law. For scholars, policymakers, and the public, it remains a vivid example of how bold moves can backfire when met with strategy, resolve, and adherence to established processes. The episode is a reminder that in an increasingly interconnected world, power is not just about money, influence, or threats. It's about understanding the rules of engagement, respecting institutions, and anticipating the ripple effects of every action. While Trump's approach captured headlines, Carney's measured response captured the respect of the international community, proving that diplomacy and resolve often outweigh audacity in shaping long-term outcomes. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Comment below with your thoughts on this diplomatic showdown. Did Trump's threat have any merit, or was Canada's response the ultimate strategic win? As the story continues to unfold, observers on both sides of the border are closely monitoring subsequent developments. Trade officials are evaluating whether the bridge negotiations could serve as a blueprint for future cross-border infrastructure projects. Experts emphasize that the key takeaway is adaptability. Nations must balance assertive negotiation tactics with respect for international norms and existing legal frameworks. Moreover, this episode has sparked discussions in academic and policy circles about the evolving nature of North American economic integration. Scholars argue that incidents like these demonstrate the critical importance of institutional resilience, transparent governance, and clear communication between allies. By studying these interactions, future policymakers can learn how to leverage strategic influence without undermining long-term relationships. In parallel, businesses engaged in cross-border trade are recalibrating their strategies. Automotive manufacturers, logistics operators, and construction firms must now consider political risk as an integral component of planning, ensuring that operations can withstand unexpected diplomatic tensions. Investors are similarly adjusting expectations, recognizing that even high-profile threats can be mitigated by strong institutional responses. Beyond the immediate economic and political dimensions, the incident has cultural implications as well. Public discourse in Canada reflects a renewed sense of national confidence, highlighting the value of standing firm in the face of external pressure. In the United States, discussions about leadership, negotiation styles, and international perception continue to shape public opinion and influence policy debates. The bridge, in many ways, has transcended its functional purpose. It now serves as a symbol of resilience, collaboration, and the nuanced dynamics of international negotiation. Analysts suggest that future infrastructure projects, whether in North America or beyond, will be assessed not only on economic viability, but also on diplomatic sensitivity, public perception, and strategic alignment with long-term national interests. This event also underscores the interplay between domestic politics and foreign policy. Leaders must weigh the political benefits of assertive action against the potential costs of strained relations with key allies. The Trump-Canada bridge episode illustrates that short-term political gains achieved through threats may be overshadowed by long-term diplomatic consequences. In conclusion, the $6.4 billion bridge confrontation offers lessons in strategy, diplomacy, and leadership. It reminds the world that effective negotiation requires more than bold pronouncements. It demands foresight, patience, and an understanding of complex institutional structures. While headlines often celebrate audacity, the real measure of influence lies in achieving sustainable outcomes through principled engagement and strategic planning. The story is far from over. Future developments will continue to shape the economic, political, and cultural landscapes of both countries. By closely analyzing these events, citizens, policymakers, and business leaders can better understand the delicate balance between power, persuasion, and diplomacy in the modern world. As discussions about the bridge continued, attention turned to the broader economic implications for the North American supply chain. The automotive industry, which relies heavily on just-in-time manufacturing and cross-border logistics, closely monitored every statement from both U.S. and Canadian officials. Even minor delays or disruptions in customs approvals could ripple through factories, affecting production schedules, labor deployment, and delivery timelines. Analysts emphasized that while the bridge project itself was a discrete infrastructure initiative, its impact on trade efficiency and regional commerce was far-reaching, influencing not only Detroit and Windsor but the entire Great Lakes economic corridor. Meanwhile, Canadian officials worked to maintain a consistent message of transparency and fairness. Public briefings and press releases highlighted the procedural safeguards in place to ensure that all contractors, both domestic and international, had equal opportunities to participate. By emphasizing these principles, Canada aimed to counteract any narrative suggesting that American pressure could distort domestic decision-making. This careful balancing act required both political acumen and strategic communication, demonstrating how leadership extends beyond simple negotiation and into the realm of public diplomacy. U.S. policymakers, on the other hand, began reassessing the potential consequences of public threats in international negotiations. While Trump's approach had drawn significant attention and energized a segment of his political base, some senior officials argued that repeated reliance on high-profile threats could erode credibility over time. Diplomatic channels quietly emphasized the importance of measured engagement, noting that while leverage is a critical tool, its efficacy depends on understanding the other nation's constraints, interests, and internal politics. In the broader international arena, observers noted that the incident served as a case study in modern power dynamics. Countries with strong institutional frameworks, legal protections, and public accountability mechanisms could resist unilateral pressure without jeopardizing bilateral relations. Analysts highlighted that global investors and foreign partners were increasingly attentive to such scenarios, evaluating the resilience and decision-making processes of nations before committing to long-term projects. At the same time, trade organizations and cross-border advocacy groups became active participants in the conversation. Industry associations representing logistics, automotive, and construction interests held briefings, provided analysis, and lobbied government officials to maintain continuity and predictability in trade flows. Their involvement underscored the interconnected nature of economic infrastructure and the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement in ensuring that high-level political disputes did not unnecessarily disrupt business operations. The role of media, both traditional and social, also played a crucial part in shaping perceptions. Canadian outlets highlighted Carney's measured approach, portraying it as a model of principled leadership. U.S. media coverage, while initially focusing on the dramatic rhetoric of the threat, began to explore the nuances of negotiation, legal obligations, and cross-border economic integration. Social media discussions amplified public sentiment, with citizens debating the merits of audacious diplomacy versus cooperative engagement, creating a real-time feedback loop that influenced policymakers' strategies. Analysts also began comparing this incident with historical infrastructure disputes, drawing parallels with past U.S.-Canada projects, including transnational energy pipelines, border crossings, and joint transportation initiatives. These comparisons highlighted recurring patterns, the importance of respecting treaty obligations, the need for transparent planning, and the potential for public posturing to backfire when opposed by a country with strong governance and institutional oversight. Legal experts weighed in, emphasizing that the bridge project was subject to numerous regulatory approvals, environmental assessments, and funding agreements that limited the scope of unilateral intervention. They noted that even if economic pressure were applied, Canada's adherence to its legal framework created structural resistance, ensuring that decisions could not be arbitrarily altered without consequences. This reinforced the idea that diplomacy is as much about respecting institutions as it is about negotiating outcomes. From a strategic perspective, international relations scholars argued that the bridge incident illustrates the shift toward multipolar influence in regional economics. While the U.S. maintains significant leverage due to its economic size, allies and neighboring countries can leverage institutional strength, public opinion, and multilateral norms to counterbalance pressure, creating a more complex negotiation environment. Business leaders emphasized that adaptability would be key for future cross-border projects. Companies involved in construction, transportation, and supply chain management would need contingency plans to navigate unexpected political developments, ensuring that contractual obligations and operational continuity could be maintained regardless of external pressures. Meanwhile, educational institutions began integrating the bridge dispute into case studies for students of political science, international relations, and economics. Professors highlighted how the incident demonstrated the interplay between domestic politics, international law, economic strategy, and leadership decision-making, offering real-world lessons for future policymakers. The ripple effects also extended into regional politics. Local governments in both Michigan and Ontario engaged with stakeholders to assess potential impacts on employment, commuter traffic, and regional economic development. Town halls, community meetings, and advisory councils were convened to provide citizens with updates and incorporate local perspectives into planning discussions, demonstrating the interconnectedness of infrastructure projects with civic engagement. Public sentiment continued to evolve as media coverage expanded. In Canada, citizens celebrated Carney's steadfast approach, framing it as a defense of national sovereignty. In the U.S., debates grew more nuanced, with commentators exploring the tension between assertive foreign policy and cooperative diplomacy. Social media trends showed hashtags emphasizing sovereignty, fairness, and strategic negotiation, reflecting the public's interest in understanding both the symbolic and practical dimensions of the bridge dispute.